Parshas Chayei Sarah, Tovshin Pei Aleph. What an interesting parsha. Parshas Chayei Sarah, we know it interests people for a lot of reasons, but one of the main reasons is we talk about shidduchim. And so many ways of looking for a shidduch, so many ways for finding a shidduch, is all right here in our parsha. And Chazal tell us about one part of the story here in Parshas Chayei Sarah. They talk to us about Eliezer Eved Avraham. Eliezer, we know, famously was sent by Avraham Avinu to go find a shidduch for his son, to find a shidduch for Yitzchak. And the Torah speaks at great length about what happened when Eliezer went to find his shidduch. And not only does the Torah tell us what happened, but the Torah repeats itself over and over. It tells us what happened when he went, and then it tells us what happened when Eliezer was telling over the story. And there is no space spared in the Torah. The Torah, which is usually very precise, very concise, watches every word, every letter. Over here, it's great length. We speak about this episode, we speak about how Eliezer went to find a shidduch for Yitzchak, and then finally finding Rivka. We speak about it, the brevity. We don't conserve space over here in our parsha. And Eliezer was a very special person. Chazal tell us about Eliezer, that Eliezer, was really amongst those who were cursed. He came from Eliezer. We know that when there was a curse by Noach, there was a curse of Oror Kenan, a gezerah of Oror Kenan. So really, the Medrash tells us that Eliezer was part of that curse. He was a descendant of that, and he was not a blessed person. He was cursed. But since Eliezer dedicated himself to serving the tzaddik, Avraham Avinu, he now became Baruch. He became a blessed person. And the Medrash learns this from a pasuk in our parsha. The pasuk says, Vayomer, when they were telling Lavan, they were telling Eliezer to come in and come into the house. Vayomer, boy Baruch Hashem, the one who was blessed by Hashem, come into the house. Lomo sa'amoy bachutz. Why are you standing outside? Come on in. Come join us inside. The pasuk, the Torah, refers to Eliezer as boy, what? Baruch Hashem. Somebody who is blessed. And the Medrash tells us that he did a switch. He did a switch over from someone who was Oror, someone who was a descendant, someone who was in a family of being cursed people. Eliezer now, just from the fact that Eliezer said, Elokei Adoni Avraham, and he called Avraham Avinu his master, that he totally subordinated himself to Avraham Avinu, he did a switch. He became a person who is now, boy, Baruch Hashem. He became someone that was blessed. So Nesivos Shalom asks, and he really points out, that we know that Eliezer was a very special person. Eliezer had been in the house of Avraham Avinu. Eliezer was obviously naturally a good person. Eliezer had done many good things in his life up until this point, up until he was sent to find a shidduch for Yitzchak. So why was it, all the other mitzvahs, umasim toivim, that Eliezer did, he was still called Oror. It didn't change, because the Medrash told us, when did it change? Only now. And Oror means, what does Oror mean? Oror means somebody who's connected to the Satan, that the Satan rules over you. You're not in a parsha of Baruch, someone who's connected to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, right? So Eliezer, up until now, no. But until he called Avraham Avinu his Adon, once he called Avraham Avinu his master, that was so great, and only that was able to turn Eliezer around for life, that now you're going to be a blessed person for life. Up until now, is mitzvah masim tovim? No, you stay the way you are. But now, you call Avraham Avinu your master, and everything changes. So Nesivos Shalom tells us that the Torah is coming to teach us a very important lesson. And it's coming to teach us the importance of something known as Kol HaMechubar L'Tahar Tahar. That when you connect yourself to something that is Tahar, you connect yourself to something good. It teaches us what it means to be attached to the Avos, attached to the Tzaddikim. You attach yourself to one of them, you become like them. You take on the characteristics of that person, of that type of person. And because Eliezer totally subordinated himself to Avraham, Eliezer totally attached himself to Avraham, he was now mechubar l'tor. He was connected to a Baruch, who obviously we know, the Torah tells us, that Avraham Avinu, beginning of Parshas Lech Lecha, V'avarecha, right? Kadosh Baruch Hu tells Avraham Avinu that Avraham Avinu is for sure a person who is Baruch. Now, Eliezer, when you connect yourself to that type of person, you too become that way. And that's a level that Eliezer could not reach with all the good deeds he had done in his life until now. But he took himself and he connected to a good person. Now he's able to reach a totally new madriga. And so too we see by Moshe Rabbeinu. We know that Moshe Rabbeinu did a phenomenal amount of great things in his life. Moshe Rabbeinu reached madrigas unbelievable, all total great things and high madrigas. But what really defined Moshe Rabbeinu, what does the Torah tell us defined Moshe Rabbeinu? The Torah tells us Moshe Eved Hashem. That was Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu was Eved Hashem. He connected himself. He totally attached himself and went under the wings, Kaviyachal, of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Eved means to be totally connected, to give yourself over totally. And Nesivos Shalom tells us that this is really an eitzah for any Jew. For any person that feels sometimes you feel distant, you feel alienated, you feel down, you feel you have a hard time connecting, right? The very trendy word, I don't connect to this, I'm not feeling it, right? So Nesivos Shalom tells us, if a person is not feeling it, if a person feels themselves like an aror, they feel themselves alienated, that you're not attached to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, what do? You find it difficult to attach directly now to HaKadosh Baruch Hu? Go attach yourself to good people. And any person, any friend, any parent will tell you how good it is and what a good influence it is to begin with when you attach yourself to good people. Everybody wants their children. Everybody wants people that they know. You want a good friend for that reason, because they influence you and you become part of that crowd. And really a person does become what they hang around with and what they connect with. So here, if you're feeling alienated, it says in Nesivos Shalom, find yourself good people. Connect yourself to good people that they can influence you in a positive way. And unfortunately, it works the other way too. When a person connects to people that are negative, people that have negative vibes, people that are doing negative things. There are some people who are always negative because they're negative people. You attach yourself to them. Unfortunately, it works the other way too. And the Nesivos Shalom tells us that this is the real reason why Hasidim attach themselves to a Rebbe. Why do you attach yourself to a Rebbe? Aside from the fact that you want the benefits, you want the brachas and all that, but the reason a person is supposed to attach himself to a Rebbe is because when you have a tzaddik that is always connected to Hashem, right? When you connect to that person, you become part of that person on a spiritual level. So the Rebbe is like a conduit between you and HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You don't worship a Rebbe. Or maybe some people think they do and this and that, but obviously it's not the right way. What the Rebbe is he's a conduit, a connection, a thoroughfare, a way for you to connect and thereby connect to HaKadosh Baruch Hu on a spiritual level. And Chazal tell us about this week's Parsha, where we spoke about at the beginning of this year, how at great length we tell over the whole story of Eliezer, if we want to call it a story. We see that the Torah speaks with such brevity, the Torah speaks at such length about it, that the Yafasi Chasan, it is nicer and better, the banter and the speech of Avdei Avos, more mitayrasan shalbanim, because sometimes in other places in the Torah, mitayrasan shalbanim, it's spoken in a short way. And here we see that it's spoken at great length. Look how the Torah, over 2 or 3 dafim in the Sefer Torah, you look 2 or 3 full pages to do this, to relate this entire episode of the story of what happened and the conversations of Eliezer. But what does it mean? What do Chazal mean when they tell us that it's more chashuv than the Torah of the Banim? How does that work? So the Nesivos Shalom says that if you look at the lashon of this Chazal, we can understand. What do you mean? The Sichasan, it's the conversations of an Eved is more than the Torah of the Banim, the Torah of the children of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. What are we saying over here? If you look at the lashon of the Medrash says Yafa Sichasan Shel Avdei Avos. It uses that key word. Someone who's an Eved, that is more chashuv. It doesn't say Yafa Sichasan of Eliezer. It doesn't speak out that the conversation of Eliezer. No, someone who is, the fact that he was Avdei Avos, and it's interesting to note, somebody mentioned to me today, we talk about how at great length we speak about it. If you want to know how many times it says the word Eliezer in this week's Parsha, the answer is 0. Does not say his name once. Avdei Avos. It speaks about Eved Avraham. So Yafa Sichasan Shel Avdei Avos. That's what defined him. An Eved who is so devoted, that type of conversation, he becomes like part of Avraham Avinu. He becomes a shliach of Avraham, which makes him just like Avraham. He's so attached to Avraham, it's as if Avraham Avinu alone was saying saying this conversation in the Torah. And that is really why it's so chashuv, because it's like it was Avraham Avinu. The Sefer Priya Aretz, brought down the Nesivos Shalom, Sefer Priya Aretz in Parshas Vayetze, says something beautiful. We want to end with this. We say in Hallel, Ani avdecha ben amosecha, I am an Eved, the son of your maid. Ani avdecha ben amosecha, pitachta l'moisera. You can open my bonds. You can open my shackles. So regularly, if you have an Eved, you have a slave, an Eved, right? You got to keep an eye on it, because at the beginning, when you get an Eved, what's going to happen? He's going to try to escape. He's going to try to cause a rebellion, right? You have to always watch out for an Eved. But what about an Eved who was born already on the premises? An Eved who was born to your home. Do you have to worry about him escaping? No, he's not going anywhere. You don't need to tie him down. You don't need to tie him, because he's not going to leave. He's not going to escape. That's his place. So David HaMelech says, Ani avdecha ben amosecha. I am an Eved ben amosecha. I'm the son of your maid. I'm the son of somebody who is already here. Pitachta l'moisera. You could let me free. You could open my shackles. What a beautiful pshat the Nesivos Shalom says from the Priya Aretz. You could open my shackles because I'm not going anywhere. I don't want to go anywhere. I'm so connected. I'm your Eved. And that's what we learn from Eliezer. In this week's Parsha, Eliezer teaches us to be connected to a tzaddik. Be connected to good people. It has such an influence on your life. Move away from people that might be negative. Attach yourself. Find good friends. Find good people. And that raises your level spiritually. It connects you in such a better way. We learn from Eliezer, you do that and you become so much more connected spiritually. Let's learn that lesson from this week's Parsha.